What's up, everybody? Welcome again to the Chasing Creativity Podcast. This is episode 14 with electronic music producer, Rhett. Hello, friends. Episode 14 is here. I just finished editing the podcast. It is awesome. I'm really excited to have this one out. Of course, this episode is with Rhett. Rhett is an electronic music producer who over the past 2 years has released on 5 Mau5trap compilations, as well as 2 solo Mau5trap releases. Those releases are titled Substruct and Hollow Earth. And now the timing for this episode could not be better because Hollow Earth released just last week. For the release, you have the title track, titled Hollow Earth, of course, as well as the collaboration track titled Crater. That track, Crater, was co-produced with Mau5trap artist ATTLAS. In today's episode, we get into the most recent release, specifically around his creative process behind the tracks, the collaborative process with ATTLAS, and how him and ATTLAS actually got to know each other a long time ago attending university in Toronto. So we really get into a lot related to the most recent release and also behind the creative process behind his music, and also kind of some, I don't want to say tips, but some of the techniques behind how he produces given tracks. So for those music producers out there, I think this is a really interesting episode to check out, just for that reason that you kind of get to dig in a little bit behind the scenes of how this music is put out. Now, before we jump into today's episode, we will be showcasing a clip of Crater. So kind of give you a sense of what this release is like, give you a sense of the music that he produces if you haven't listened to his music yet. And of course, if you enjoy it, please go support him by checking him out on Spotify, Mau5trap, right? We can always just go search Mau5trap's artist and find him there, or on Beatport. If you want to purchase this given release, of course, that always supports the artist to do so. So I highly support that and recommend that. I'll be putting episodes. I'll be putting links out so you can find ways to find his music more easily. But if you search the track Hollow Earth, HOLLOWEARTH, track and release, of course, right? But if you search that on Spotify or SoundCloud or any of these outlets, you're going to find that release and you'll be able to be tied into his music there. So go and check that out. And that's really it. I'll have those links out there on the website, on Instagram. You can find both of those at chasingcreativitypodcast.com as well as chasing.creativity.podcast on Instagram. Those are the easiest ways to get information about the show and previous guests. Now, last thing I just want to say before we jump into this episode, is thank you for all of you who are continually listening to the show. Just knowing that people are out there downloading episodes and enjoying listening to these episodes really is so exciting for me, and I am extremely grateful to know that people are out there listening. So I just want to pause and say that before jumping in, not to spend too much here on this intro monologue, but thank you. And that's it. So let's jump into the episode. We're going to start with a given section of Crater, just to give a sense, of course, of his music, and then jump right into the episode. Again, we will be continuing to release episodes on Wednesday, so look for new episodes, and I'll speak with you all again soon. thank you for coming on. I, as always, really, really appreciate it. Always look forward to these episodes, and this one especially because I'm a big Mau5trap fan and nerd at heart. So so your willingness to come on and talk about releases and all the cool stuff you've been doing in terms of putting out music, I'm really appreciative of.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. So I say we start right out. I mean, you just put out Hollow Earth last week, and so this couldn't be a better time to dig in and start talking about the release. So why don't we just start there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but
yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the cover? You can talk about the tracks. I collaborated with ATTLAS on one song, my friend Jeff.
Yeah. So let's start there. I mean, so one thing I did see that there. So there's that collab with ATTLAS. What has that whole process been like? One, to meet him, right? Because I know he's based in Toronto. So you guys, of course, know each other. So what was that like, getting to know him in this kind of small knit scene and then starting to put out music together?
Well, we actually, this might be out there somewhere, but we actually met in university. So we were both going to Ryerson University like 6 years ago.
Okay.
Became friends there, bonded over music, and were throwing stuff back and forth. And then he went down to do all of his music projects, and he helped me get in touch with the Mau5trap guys, which was wonderful. And so we've known each other for a long time, and we're good friends.
Yeah.
But we weren't thinking about working on a track together. Like always, I've been sending stuff back and forth, but we weren't thinking about working on a track together. And then one of the A&R guys at Mau5trap said, I sent them what Crater originally was, and they said, you should send this over to Jeff and see if he can do anything with it. And then it just kind of went down the rabbit hole.
Interesting. Okay, so you were initially kind of working on, and that was Crater, right? So Crater's the one you did the collab with ATTLAS, right? And then Hollow Earth is the other track on the release that's just your track.
Yep.
So awesome. So you passed over Crater, and then what, if you don't mind kind of diving in a little bit there, where was it before, and then what kind of happened between that collaboration between you two?
I would say before its structure was a bit more defined. It was more of a pop song, sort of, in that like that vocal sample that you hear,
right?
Which is I think it's like Loop Master's Indian vocal or something. It's from like a Bollywood sound pack. I don't know how technical or how much of the audio stuff you want to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I want to dig into that too. So just a sidebar, just so I think I should have maybe said this before, but I produce, but just as a hobbyist, right? So it's nothing amazing, but I definitely am familiar.
Okay. Well, anyway, we it had that sample in it, and it was more it was telling kind of the main melody, like the story of the song was being told with that sample. And Jeff took that and kind of flipped it and made it into this massive, like almost a pad behind, like that scream kind of when the kick comes in. He turned it into that, and it's really a totally different track. Like I don't even think I would want to release the original one now, because what it turned into, I'm so happy with. But that was his first big contribution. Then his second big contribution was changing the structure around, and he threw in that little kind of proggy section,
right.
The triplet plucks in the, I guess, the second act of the song. And that I think really helped shape the track. It was really great working with him. It was really excellent. It was a blast.
That's really cool, because I haven't had that experience where, just with buddies, right, collaborated on a song or anything, but I would imagine it's so cool because you get then two different eyes looking at something, and you're going to get, of course, that other person's perspective on it. And by the end of it, it's not going to be really your track. It's not going to be his track. It's going to be something that really only comes out of you two working on that piece together. So it really can allow for something, I think, really, really incredible. And I will say that song Crater is amazing. Both songs, Hollow Earth and Crater, on
Thank you.
that album. Absolutely, man. I'm a huge fan. So we'll be getting into other tracks to speak about two of yours, because I have some in there that I really love. But just listening to this new release, it is really, really, it's amazing. I love it. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So, but I guess just to kind of tie back into that, having that ability to pass that off with a buddy that you've known for a long time and go back and forth and then really see what comes out of it must be really fun from a music producer's perspective, and kind of opens up different creative doors.
I think the coolest thing for me about it was getting to see what I'd already seen this a little bit with Jeff, but I've also done collaborations with Monster Get Down, and it's kind of who's also on Mau5trap, and it's kind of the same thing. You get to see inside their session a little bit. You get to see how they work a little bit and learn from that. There's a lot of stuff that Jeff does that I need to do more of. Something he's really good at is bouncing to audio. His computer is old and bad like mine, so we're frequently hitting the CPU limit. So you got to bounce to audio all the time, and I need to do that more. I think that's a hugely important thing for me as like a creative, like locking in an idea. I think that's huge for me.
That's cool. So the idea of, bouncing down a track, then you're freezing it. Like, so in Ableton, you freeze that track, right? And then you just have that audio clip. So your perspective there is that if you can kind of bounce it down, right, and then you have it locked in time, you're not going to go and touch it. That's part of the track now. You're just going to move forward and see what builds off of it from there.
Yeah, and even after that, like you can edit that. A lot of times, ideas come from that. Like, I'll be working on a song for a week, and I'll think, oh, this is done. I'm going to start bouncing stuff down. And then you'll hear like a quarter note loop of one of the sounds that you made, and be like, no, that's actually the track. Everything else I did before that was like preparing to,
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. I think that I guess I found that myself when you're working on a track, right? So you have maybe a foundational idea with a track, and you have bass and you have a mid section, right? And then you get a minute into a track and something clicks, as you mentioned, and then you say, okay, wait, no, this is the track. Trash everything else. This is the track now. It's cool because it almost feels as if, since you have that foundation and you're setting kind of some parameters with what that track's going to be like, you might open yourself a little bit to be more creative with ideas, kind of playing on top of that foundation, if you will, and letting your mind wander a little bit, and then boom, that thing kind of clicks, and then, okay, wait, no, this is what I want to go with. I think I don't know, I just think it's a cool way to maybe even address working on music. It's never that start to finish. It's pulling out things that seem to fit and then running with it.
Absolutely. You read a lot, like if you look at online advice about making music, people will say, oh, never throw out your tracks that you don't like or that you worked on for 15 minutes. Like, never throw this away, because you always hear about people like, go back, oh, this sound was good, like there was a reason that I liked this. It's all about taking those little tiny chunks of something and making it into something more. And to what you were saying about, like, you built a track up and you found this part that you like, I've definitely just taken one channel out of a whole session and then put it into a new one and started from scratch around that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you're... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I love that. I found the same thing, just to mention. And, mine, again, it's just for fun. So I want to preface that for people listening and like screaming. Like, I'm getting to talk with you who's releasing on Mau5trap, but just to, agree there is if sometimes I'll mute a few tracks, and then suddenly it sounds totally different, that might cue up something to see like, oh, that can go in a totally different direction,
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way to go, And another thing along those lines, I used to be kind of afraid to throw out stuff. Like you have this, I don't know if it's an attachment or you feel like you've invested time into like a kick or whatever. And you have to remind yourself that has like zero value unless it's helping you finish a song.
Right.
Because if it's not helping you do that, what's even the point? Like it might sound sick and you worked on it for 3 hours, which we've all done.
Yeah.
But if it's not helping you finish the track, then it's like, what's the fucking point?
Right. Yeah. So then for this release in particular, did you find that some of the pieces kind of stuck out? Maybe like if we dig into Hollow Earth a little bit, did you find that that track in particular was kind of piecemeal from other different projects, or what was it like putting that track together?
That track, to be honest with you, is like a year old. They from like the start of working on it, and I would say it was in its current form like 6 months ago, and it just took a while to get out.
Yeah.
But I had those 6 months to kind of like really tighten it up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, it is what it is. But when I started making it, I think it was based around that. A lot of comments that I've read think it's a vocal sample, but it's not. It's a synth sound that has kind of like a formant filter effect.
Interesting. I would have sworn it was a vocal. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
No, it's actually a preset on Reasons. This is the synth I use most often. Reasons. It's called Subtractor. It's like the equivalent of Analog in Ableton, and it's based on a preset on that which I changed to get it sounding right for the song. But yeah, and that was kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's like a little bit of a hook. And then it kind of went from there. Like I wanted to make something that sounded like you could play it at 4:00 in the morning and it was like dark.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the name of the release came from. It was like darkness, grime,
Right. Yeah.
damp.
Yeah. I like
Moss.
it. So then when you're working on tracks, and I know that you mentioned this was done a little while ago, but if you bring yourself back there, are you visualizing what you want the track to feel like in a visual perspective, as you mentioned, like dark, damp, mossy? Like, are you thinking about those things, or is it while you're working on a track, it just kind of speaks to you in a certain sense? You're like, okay, this feels really dark and ominous and things, and I want to build on that.
I think that helps me. I like you kind of get the idea of when you pick that key sound or that idea or the loop or whatever, you kind of associate a feeling or a vibe to it. Okay, and then for me, that like permeates the rest of the track. Yeah. Like it goes everywhere. Once I feel like, oh, this is like creepy. This is like a creepy sound or something like that. It permeates the rest of the track. Mm-hmm. Whereas I thought, and that interestingly on Crater, that kind of changed because it also started out sort of like a spooky sound. I feel like that vocal sample in Crater is spooky. And, if someone who's familiar with the pack could track down the original one, I honestly can't remember what sample it is anymore. But that it changed. I think it's more uplifting now. What the thing that Jeff did to it and turned it into this kind of like blast. To me, it sounds like an uplifting yell or something like that. I totally changed the vibe of the track. Interesting. But that's just I think that's just something I do to work and reach the goal. Mm-hmm. I don't know, the goal being finishing the song.
That's always yeah. There's always that like 50% of the way through, and you're like, hitting your head because it's just stuck. Yeah, so that's a
brutal.
good goal. Yeah, no, that's it's cool how you mentioned those things, and I will say that in Crater where there's that big, I don't want to call it like a drop, but that huge like blast, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
I think production wise, I just wanted to mention too, that's done so well. Like it really, the tension is just done so well, and then boom, it like changes the whole kind of direction of the track a little bit. So it's done really well. I really do love that track.
From thank you very much.
Yeah.
From a technical side of that, that comes from like that kind of 0 to 100 thing. I feel like that comes from editing printed audio, like
interesting
100%, because you it's all lined up. You can find those transients and make it work. Like I don't think it would have sounded the same if we had left everything in MIDI and all that. I think it comes from editing audio. Someone who does that really well, like I think this is like how he works exclusively, is Matt Lang.
Okay.
Who's also a Mau5trap artist. These are like the only guys I know how they work. But he's huge. Anything you read about him working, it's all about editing audio, and
wow,
he's big into the glitchy stuff. I'm a firm believer that editing like audio files makes things get more interesting. You can nudge them around. You can pick out sections that you wouldn't have heard otherwise when you were doing it with MIDI. It makes things a bit more interesting, I think.
Oh, that's so cool. That's the first time that topic has come up on a given episode. So it's really interesting that you address it that way, and you find that adds a lot to that creative process behind your music, because I just hadn't thought of it. So the idea is that you bounce those tracks down, right? So you have the audio tracks, and then as you're approaching, say, where you want that big, blast, you're maybe applying a filter to those so they like really pull out all the lows, and then bam. But when you're doing it on the audio tracks, it's like more effective is the idea, or you can just edit it in a different way. You can apply different filters, etc., to really like pull out more to the track.
Yeah, I think it's just about stack in that case where you want to make it massive when the kick starts again in Crater specifically. It's about grabbing sections of audio that you wouldn't be able to have if you're doing it with MIDI, and just kind of dragging them there and trying stuff. Yeah. Which I think makes it's way more immediate, I think.
Interesting. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I've never played with that. I've never dug into that all that much, but that's really interesting. I'm gonna start doing my research on that, because I know that Matt Lang also is a huge proponent of teaching. So he does lots of like workshops and stuff where he'll go through and piece apart tracks, and he's obsessed with it, and to see from your perspective and from his perspective as well that's this kind of differentiator, that's really cool.
Yeah, I really anything that you can see of his online, he's like a master of the session and like building out tracks. Yeah, it's very very cool to watch, especially if you're he works in Pro Tools, I think, exclusively. So if you're a Pro Tools head, then you can learn a lot from him.
Yeah, I do like watching. I'll find little things here and there on Pro Tools and watch different actually a lot in film composition. A lot of people use Pro Tools, so I'll see it there specifically, and it does seem very clean. Like when I look at track layout, I'm like, ooh, Pro Tools does look kind of nice. But I think that's just playing to how poorly I put together stuff in Ableton. Like my shit is a mess. Like there's stuff everywhere. It's bad.
You can have gross sessions in Pro Tools too. Before I went to university, I went to school for audio engineering, so I got the whole Pro Tools rundown. Like I learned audio editing in Pro Tools, and it is unmatched in audio editing, which is what Matt, I think that's why he uses it. Like the stuff you can do in there, in like a Reason, which I use. I don't know if I said that already. It doesn't even come close. Like it's not even close. Wow. Pro Tools is incredible for editing. And that's why, like you were saying, the film audio guys use it. It's for sound design, mixing, all of that. It's I'm pretty sure they use it exclusively in film. Like,
I have heard, aside from what you're mentioning now, I think maybe one other person has said they'll produce in, say, Ableton, and they'll mix down, and then they'll pull everything into Ableton for mixing. And man, I never have gone that route, but just speaking about it now, it's something I want to play with for sure. That's interesting.
You should definitely try it. I think I have an old license. I don't know how expensive it is now. Oh, it might be the monthly fee thing. So you can try it for a month or something. But yeah, it's a bit pricey. But if you're into that sort of stuff, if you're editing, if you're doing a lot of film work, then I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah,
it's a sick program.
Yeah, I'm gonna play with it. That's cool. So you mentioned that at this was a little bit before going to school. You were working in audio editing as like or for school for like an audio engineer, and then you switched. Is that correct?
Yeah, I straight out of high school, my marks were not the best. And,
same.
I went to college for. Excuse me.
Oh, you're good.
I went to college for audio engineering and learned about. That's where I met a very good friend who also makes music under the name Singleaf. He's not really in the dance music scene, but anyway, I'll name drop him right there. And he's really influenced me. I met a lot of guys there that were really influential to me. And after I went there, like we learned how to use Pro Tools. That's where I learned about Reason. That's where I learned how to work in a studio. I went out and did the studio thing, realized it wasn't for me, and ended up getting my marks up and going to university, going to film school. And that's where I met Jeff. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Yeah. You mentioned film. Yeah. So then, what's your day-to-day look like then right now? So you've gone to film school, you're working, and then kind of on the side then, are you finding time here and there to work on the tracks that are being released here?
I'm actually full-time into music.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, it's okay. It's okay.
That's the life. Oh my God.
Yeah. What happened was I got out of film school and weirdly got a job in video games in Toronto. There's a huge video game, independent video game scene. I got involved with a company that did analytics. And anyway, at some point, a couple of years ago, they laid a bunch of people off. I was one of them. And I said, well, I'll give music a try and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's of course the dream. Like I know that a lot of times, especially, getting to the stage where you're doing amazing things, right? You have 5, I just put some notes together for today's episode, 5 releases on Mau5trap compilations, and then there was Substruct and then Hollow Earth as 2 standalone releases on Mau5trap of your own. So I mean, you're really doing it, but to take this and have that as a full-time thing and just be able to dedicate fully your time to music, I mean, that's a dream. That's amazing, man. That's super cool.
It's very cool, and I really appreciate that my wife is tolerating it. And I'm going to do it for as long as I can, and I'm going to try and make it sustainable. Yeah. But it's also insanely stressful. And if anyone who's listening who's like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go full time, I would say push as far as like I was working on music when I was at my job, not as seriously as I do now, of course. But I only stopped working there because I got laid off. You know? Right. Would I have been as successful in like getting connections at Mau5trap and working with all the people I've worked with? I'm not sure. But I think I would. For me, I would have wanted to get a little bit better first. Like I feel like I've improved. Even since I've started releasing on Mau5trap, I feel like I've grown so much. Yeah. And if I did that while there wasn't the stress of trying to create an income from music, I think it would have been a lot better for me psychologically. That's a bit. Sorry to turn this into a therapy session.
No. It's super interesting because, of course, this is geared towards people who love music, right? A lot of producers, right? Because there's just been a lot of producers on for given episodes. So that comes up so often. I mean, that's the dream, is to work on music. It just, so to hear what that process has been like for you and everything around it is, for myself at least, super interesting because I'm in the same boat. I'll go to work and then I come home and girlfriend gets home too and we're doing our thing, and then as a hobby I'm fitting in music, and now it's definitely getting pushed out in a good way with the podcast because this thing is taking up a ton of time in a good way, but so when you have those other responsibilities is hard, and it's just a truth of the matter that if your time is being focused somewhere, it's taking away from other things. So if you're at a job that's taking up time, especially, not to speak to your situation or my situation, but someone out there, if they're in a job that they don't really feel like what they're doing they're enjoying, and they'd rather be, say, working on music or film or whatever it is, it's hard. It's hard to balance those two and say, when's the right time to take that step if I want to go full time with, say, music or whatever it might be, and it's commendable. I really do think so. Honestly, like to find what you love and go after it, even if it kind of was a fortuitous event now, that the company laid some people off or whatever, but look at it now. It's like you get this amazing opportunity,
Yeah, I'm super lucky. Like, you have to have there's a lot of, I'm very privileged to be able to do this. So
yeah.
I don't take that for granted. I hope nobody thinks that I do, like in my family.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting thing, man, because I see it around myself a lot. Just being kind of in the corporate grind is like, there's a lot of, I love being here, corporate Kool-Aid kind of thing, but really, does that person love being there? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's,
I think if you take 2 or 3 steps back, it can, I was there too. I did enjoy working where I worked. The people there were lovely, but was it making tunes? No, it wasn't as good as that.
Right.
I will say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just speaking, and I think a lot of people that will listen to this given episode and prior episodes, a lot of, as I mentioned, being producers, will understand that process of making a track and having that opportunity to start with something completely bare, right? And then it starts to form into something that you really like. That's such a rewarding feeling, and it's addicting. It really gets super addicting to work on tracks and then see your efficiency progress over time and get better and better. It's you can find yourself working on the computer all the time. I've definitely been there. So yeah,
that's speaking of working on the computer all the time, that it's something that I hadn't experienced until I work from home. My office is one door down from my bedroom. So it can be a bit hard to, this is one of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
There's it can be a bit hard to step out of the room.
Right. Right.
When you're working on it full time, you feel guilty. That's a new thing. Like, you feel guilty if you're not working on music. All of your waking hours. Right.
Right.
And I've definitely a few times in the past couple years have like burnt out because it even when I was doing fine and making a lot of tracks, it just is like a switch that flips and it's like, oh man, I've been doing this way too much.
Right.
Like way too much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
I don't know. Just something to throw out there for people who are thinking about going at it whole hog.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed with myself, so I think about this a lot, right? Because for me, I would be so grateful if I had, let's say, something that brought in enough money where I could quit my job. I mean, one day, you just never know. Like, and I've thought about that, just playing out little thought experiments in my head, and I've thought, okay, if I'm at home all day, would I get kind of cooped up? And I've had like a Saturday, right, where my girlfriend's gone and I'll work on music all day. And I'm like, this is what I'd have the opportunity to do. And you almost have to make sure you have a couple things going on, like you get out of the house and maybe do something here. Because for myself, I found if I'm alone with myself like all day, after 8 hours, like I had the best time making music, but it's a little for me. I'm like a little like, I need to see some people. Yeah. So it's funny that way because I think from any perspective, someone will look at it's like the grass is always greener, right? So take someone from my perspective, I'm like, oh my God, I want to quit my job, blah, blah, blah. And as a, I keep saying this, no, as a counter argument, my buddy owns a restaurant, right? So I've known him since 6th grade. He's my best friend. And he's extremely fortunate because while the restaurant's doing well and he goes in, let's just say, a few times right now that it's stable. When it started, it was different, but right now that it's stable, he'll go in the middle of the day, make sure everything's running well, and he can kind of be in and out. He doesn't have to be there at say 8, but he's told me that he can be envious of, let's say, his wife's brother because he just works a corporate job, right? And when he's done at 5, he gets to turn it off. Whereas my buddy, he can't ever turn it off. He's always thinking, it's 5, 6, 7, 9. It's a Saturday at 11. He's worrying about the restaurant. Is something going wrong? Right? So I think from an outsider's perspective, oftentimes someone can say, oh my God, I want this. This is that. But you have to really understand all of these different components. And as you mentioned, you found that there's kind of this guilty aspect now a little bit that you got to be working on music because you've taken this full time,
Yeah, it's stressful. What I liked about the 9 to 5 job is the goals are all defined for you.
Yeah,
I think especially for us in music, you've got to be really good at setting goals for yourself and then executing them.
Right.
And that's not it wasn't in my wheelhouse, I would say. And it's still not really, but like I try. And I mean, for your friend in a restaurant business, it's like that times 1,000. Like
right.
Owning a restaurant to me seems like a nightmare. But you've got to be able to set goals for yourself because no one else in music, what I've found, like unless you are hot shit, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like you have to finish the tracks, deliver them, hope people like them, and hope that people get back to you, and then you start to get goals where people start asking you for stuff.
Right.
But before that, and I'm there now. Like I have to be like, okay, well, what can I package up that someone's gonna like and want to release?
Yeah.
That I will also be okay with myself about doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and that for me is the challenge. Like I've never ever, even like in university, back to high school, I was always really bad at doing that, like setting goals and finishing assignments and things like that. It's the exact same thing, except now I'm as an adult, I can be like talk to myself and be like, you're being an idiot. Just work on it. You got to bang this out. Like there's no option B. So just bang it out. But that for me is definitely the hardest thing about doing it full time. Just like it's like running your own business. It's like running a restaurant.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Sort of. and it's cool in a sense because there's no set path. It's not, as you mentioned, like with a corporate job. Okay, you do this, and you get the check mark, like, or if you do these sets of things, you can, get a promotion, or like in medicine, right? They go through so much schooling, but it's all kind of predefined. Like there's this path, and as long as you can get through that freaking path, you're going to be a doctor and you're going to make a lot of money, but you just have to go through that path. Those steps are there. Whereas like with music or these other ventures, like say owning a restaurant or taking your music full time and treating it as this passion that you want to move forward with, you get to set what that path is like, and I think that can be, of course, really exciting because, a person can get kind of get bored doing the same thing over and over, and you know exactly what's coming the next day. Like, you get this opportunity to like set this thing forward, and you get to pull the levers and change how you want it to move. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're grabbing life by the horns, I guess.
Yeah.
from your desk chair in front of your computer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think that stuff's so interesting because, you know, it's a fun, for me, it's always like thought experiments I'll play. My girlfriend won't at all. She's very by the book, like, you know, she's getting through grad school, then she's looking like 2 steps ahead, whereas I'm always looking 50 steps ahead and I can't look 2 steps ahead, you know? So I'm like big picture, like, what do I want to do? What would this life be like? So I think about that stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I think you have to dream a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you know? What's the point of life if you're not dreaming, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I love that kind of topic. I love digging into that. And it's super exciting. So for myself, you know, I want to see where this goes. Like I'm just a fan of your music, and that's one thing I wanted to dig into today. Is you know, I know a lot of Toronto guys and guys releasing on Mau5trap. I'm kind of buddies with Julian at this point, and I'm a big fan. What I wanted to mention is I'm a big fan of Substruct. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That lead about a minute 30, a minute 40 in. I like, that's the style of electronic music I love. Like, I don't know really quite how well to label it, like progressive house-ish. Like, I'm a big fan of Enzo Bennett. Sure. Yeah. So, but those types of leads that it's just, it's the stuff I love. So I wanted to dig into the song and how you went about working on that and the whole process behind releasing those 2 tracks on that EP. So let's kind of start there. So this was released on 2018, excuse me, as a 2-track album EP. First track being Substruct, second being Cello Break. What was that process like going through and writing those tracks?
Both of those, it's the same situation again. Probably if you ask a lot of people who are releasing dance music, it's all like super old tracks that end up getting released like a year later. Those were tracks that I started working on recently, after I was laid off. Like, I was just like doing as much as I could, and those ideas kind of came to me. When I was in high school, I listened to a lot of Square Pusher. Okay. So sort of like, if you're not familiar, if anyone listening is not familiar, it's like drum and bass, sequence leads, you know, weird tunings and stuff like that. And I really liked the idea of, for Substruct, having a sequence lead where it sounded kind of like the sequencer was broken. So if I remember correctly, I don't remember what the session is. I think it's that effect where it sounds like the notes are speeding up and slowing down. It's increasing and decreasing, automated increasing and decreasing the resolution of the sequencer.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I may have done that. This is another one of those things where you'll start experimenting with an idea and then take that and go somewhere else with it. What I may have done is set that up, and then to have more control over it, what I would do is like just draw that in. Like, I'm not a keyboard player or anything. I can't play that stuff. But I would take the sounds from that sequence that I made and then draw them in as MIDI notes. Right. So that I could more closely control what I was working on. But that's where that came from. That track is kind of just built around that idea, and then there's the big chord progression that comes in. Because that chord progression is there because of oh my god, my mind is going blank. San Giuliano.
Okay.
He put out a record around that time. Oh my God. One second. One second.
No, you're fine. I'm not familiar with. You said Saint Giuliano. I'm not
San
familiar.
Giuliano. It's the Italian techno guy.
It's probably bad. I don't.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Enrico San Giuliano.
Okay.
He put out a record around that time that I liked a lot. That had a lot of that dark, heavy stuff, and that was also around the time Mau5trap put out his Conjure. Which I think a lot of people have been trying to, this is myself included, when I was early on trying to figure out what I wanted my music to sound like. When his Conjure series came out, I think that really resonated with a lot of people. Those huge chord progressions, and I think for some reason that really resonated with a lot of people. I think and also they like go off massively in a nightclub, so that helps.
Yeah, no, that was something I wanted to dig into as well. Is who do you really touch or pull on? For your influence with music? Is it these guys you just mentioned? Being in that kind of Mau5trap world that you are, is Deadmau5 a big influence, or these other Mau5trap guys? What's that like?
I think for me, my electronic music influence comes from a slightly non-dance side. Like I said, Square Pusher, Aphex Twin, guys like that. And I mean, probably a lot of those guys who are on Mau5trap would list them as well. Boards of Canada, of course.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm coming at dance music from kind of a grimier, noisier side of things, instead of maybe the technical perfection that a Deadmau5 session is.
Right.
And that's not, don't want to sound like I'm denigrating or talking shit about the way he makes his sessions. Like it's perfection. It's amazing. No Mana and Black Gummy. Those guys, it's like perfect. I feel like I'm kind of coming from the warped vinyl side of that. You know what I mean?
Oh, cool.
And that's where I don't listen to one specific type of dance music or any specific kind of music. I try and pull from a lot of places, and I think, but what resonates with me is the kind of grimier, the greasier, the scratchy, noisy stuff.
Yeah. So you want to kind of capture imperfections, if you will, in the track. So going back kind of to Substruct, having, as you mentioned, you wanted to increase and decrease the resolution of the sequencer just to blend in some feel that it's not quite perfect. It's like it's like a broken sequencer, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the dream. For me, that's the dream. And that's cool. I think one of the cool things about electronic music is you can get those imperfections that you want like perfectly. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the point of electronic music. You can get everything exactly how you like. Whereas maybe when you're playing with a band, it can be about improvisation or something like that. With electronic music, when you're one person, you're putting out just exactly what you want. And if that's something that is, perfectly dialed in and incredibly loud, and you're filling up every frequency, and it's like the most perfectly produced track, or it could sound like it was cut into a wax cylinder, 120 years ago. I think both of those are equally valid, and they're both like, you have to put the same amount of attention into them. That's what I like that a lot about electronic music. It's it's like a cornucopia.
Oh yeah, agreed. I think of that a lot. When you were mentioning that, there was a quote or a video that I watched that just jumped out, that I'd watched when I really started getting into electronic music again, making electronic music, that is, for kind of the second time in my life. This guy was interviewing, I forget who the producer was, but he mentioned that all these producers have the same building blocks, but how they piece them together is totally different. And I love that analogy. It's like everyone sits in front of a DAW, everyone gets to choose, whatever it is, Reason, Pro Tools, Ableton, or whatever. Everyone gets the same. Now, it's different if you have a bunch of modular synths and you have Moogs that and awesome, preamps and stuff. But aside from that for a moment, everyone gets the same stuff to start with, and the differences in music can be extraordinary. You get dubstep, and then you get minimalist ambient music too. It's awesome for that reason.
Yeah, it really is kind of crazy when you think about it. The variety. I'm not a person who has a lot of outboard gear. That's mostly just because I can't afford it.
Same.
But something that the DAW that I use, Reason, it's known for coming with this set of plugins, and that's what you get. That's no longer the case. Like, you can kind of add to it, and they use VSTs now. But it's really cool to me that hip hop guys use it, techno producers use it. Acoustic folk bands use it, and you're using the same tools, and you're building anything you want. It's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's such a fun thing, and it gets to be so addicting. And I know I mention that like every time on this freaking podcast, but it does.
That's why you're doing it, though, right? Like,
I know. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, I would ask my girlfriend these questions, like, I was so fascinated by, these pillars of music, like, whoever you go to and you're like, that's the guy that makes the best music, or this is the song. And I would always just have these internal monologues, or ask my girlfriend, like, what do you think that is, like, getting to there and making this? And it ended up being a very short conversation and me thinking about it in my head, so this podcast has been awesome because I get to have these really cool conversations. And, no one's brought up the idea of like bouncing down to audio tracks and then using that to, manipulate in a certain way to add to tracks. That's totally new. So
that surprises me, actually. That one surprises
I swear,
me.
yeah. Maybe people use it, but no one has outwardly said like, hey, this is something that I use frequently that makes a huge difference for real. Yeah.
Maybe everybody just has a really badass computer, and it's just a couple of us that have these, like, I think my computer is like 8 years old or something like that. It's time for a refresh. But anyway,
yeah.
But what happens when I get a new computer? Will I stop doing that? I don't know.
Right. Exactly. That might be, some of these limitations that make a huge influence on how you're making music. No, I saw. Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's like being back in the olden days when you only had one drum machine and one synthesizer, and you had to make it work. It's the same. It's kind of the same thing. I mean,
totally.
Atlas's computer, Jeff, I hope he doesn't mind me talking about this, is older than mine. Like, it's crazy. I think it might be 10 years old. He's due for a refresh, but everything that comes off that machine is great. So why would you change anything?
Yeah. I saw a tweet from Spencer Brown. He said the same thing. Like, he's mixed and mastered on the same old computers and old headphones forever. I mean, that's crazy. If he's mixing his tracks, maybe he's doing like pre-mixes to send out. I don't know. But still, laptop and old headphones,
I'm pretty sure Substruct, up until mastering, I didn't have proper studio monitors. I think I had the headphones that I'm wearing right now, the ATH M50X, if anybody asks. But now I have nicer monitors.
Yeah.
This really reminds me of something. We were down at the local music store here along McQuaid, looking at speakers, and with speakers you can spend 10 grand, easily 10 grand a speaker, like it's nothing. But when I was down there, I was reminded of a tweet I saw from Fortet, and he posted a picture, said, "This is where my latest album was created." It was a desk with a laptop on it and two Mackie speakers, which are like $150 each.
Right.
So it's all about what's going on in between the ears. Not what's outside.
Yeah. And if you can go and then take it and like listen on, wherever, car speakers, whatever, you can get a sense, you get a feel of what those speakers are going to do for you. And I think it can be done for sure. I mean, we've seen it, as you just mentioned, we've seen it done. So it doesn't always come down to latest and greatest. I almost think contrary, like I know that Porter Robinson, I think his album, I don't know if it's Spitfire or what was the massive album that he put out? How am I forgetting the name now?
The one with all the K-pop samples on it?
Right.
Hold on.
We'll
find it.
Yeah. That album was just made with Fruity Loops, the synths that came with Fruity Loops. That's what I heard. It's secondhand, so it could be totally bullshit, but that's what I heard. It was all just out of the box stuff in Fruity Loops, and he put together this, album that was ultra huge. So it's
it really doesn't matter. I'm just seeing, like, I'm on his Spotify page right now. Like, was it Shelter? Was that the track?
That's what. Yeah, I think that was the. I'm not almost. I should know that, but
anyway, it has 100 million. 100 million
exactly
plays on Spotify. Just to put that out there,
right?
In Fruity Loops. So it really does not fucking matter.
Now, to swing the other way, I pulled up here because this stuck out from an episode of a podcast I like. It was an interview with Henry Rollins, and he has $200,000 speakers at his home.
Whoa!
And he will sit down. He'll dedicate days where he just sits down and listens to music. And in his opinion, they make the world of difference, right, in the sound. But I don't know. I mean, I've never heard him, so I have no idea. But hey, I don't know. I guess if you're Henry Rollins, you can kind of do whatever the fuck you want to do. But
definitely, I can't talk shit about audiophile stuff because I'm totally a nerd in that way. But I think if you spend $200,000 on a set of speakers, you're gonna feel like they add $200,000 to your life, or you better, or else I don't know.
You better.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I would go that far, but I definitely get it. I get it. Like, Also, I mean, his career is massive, and he's made it a career with music, so he might as well
totally
have the best music delivery system possible. But
exactly,
yeah, I'm also one to talk. The speakers I'm using right now are what are they called?
HS7s? Oh no,
no.
Everyone uses the
Everybody loves the Yamaha ones are great actually, but they're Focal Alpha 50, so they're a little bit
okay.
They're in the mid range, and they're not even that expensive. But so I can't talk shit about expensive monitors, but
no, I mean, but that's got to feel good. Like I don't have monitors right now. I was in the same boat. I had these like little things that said they're monitors, but they're really just like computer speakers.
That's where I was at. That's where I was at before.
Yeah. But then if you, it's almost, I don't know. I think that's just such a powerful thing to be able to say, like, I put out, or in your case, you put out awesome freaking music with you figured it out to understand what those speakers are really putting out, what the headphones are really putting out. And you did it. It's cool.
I think the main thing is just knowing what other records you sound like on your speakers, and if you can match that, then you're golden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I didn't realize, I mean, one thing, and now I'm kind of jumping back here a bit if you don't mind, but you were saying that after you took this full time, the job thing kind of had this explosion, and then you put Substruct out. So this is all pretty recent, right? So this is like 2017, 2018 that you've dove into this thing head on, and you're taking it full time.
Yeah, I think I started around, it was in 2016.
Okay.
And then I had to get my stuff to a level that I felt comfortable sharing it, and then I was still improving after that. I think I was saying earlier, like I feel like I'm still getting better and better. Like I don't feel like I listen to everybody else's music and I'm like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. What am I doing? Like, I go through phases with that. Like I shut out other like new music, and I'm like, I can't listen to it because it's making me feel sad because it's so much better than what I do. But then as soon as I listen to something, I'm like, oh, it's so inspiring at the same time. But anyway, yeah, I feel like it's taken me so long to get to where I am now. Like if I started today, I feel like I guess you have to do that. You have to kind of like climb the mountain a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think anyone that's doing good things too, I think they feel the same way. I really do. So someone who also is releasing on Mau5trap will listen to your music, or someone else on Mau5trap and be like, what the hell? You know, that's just having that internal criticism, I think, is a driving force that allows someone to make good music or good art or whatever it is. Because the minute someone gets a little lax and they're like, my music's the best, like it's just not gonna progress, you know?
I can't even imagine what that mental state is like. I hope maybe at some point I'll feel that for a second, but I don't even know. Like I couldn't imagine listening to one of Holy You. For me, his stuff is like insane.
Yeah,
Jeff, Charlie, Monster Get Down. Like I listen to their stuff and I can't believe that it's coming out, like we were talking about earlier. I can't believe that it's coming out of the same computer that I'm using.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I get that feeling. I totally do. Like I'll listen. This is a really bad habit I found myself doing, is I'll work on a track and then I'll go at the end of the night, I'll listen to something I really like. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible thing to do, because then you're like, oh, my song fucking sucks. Like, you know, I'm listening to this amazing music that I love. It's just, I think that's common. I think that's more common than a person would realize, because again, I think that's what pushes people to get better at things. You know, the thing that you put out yourself is always going to be secondary, and it can be frustrating as hell for that reason, because then I mean, I found it with myself when I'm working at a much lower level, right? So I'm just doing this as a hobby, but when I'm working on music, and then for me, I'll make what I think is like a step, right? I'm like, okay, this track is really cool. Mm-hmm. There's like these little blips where you're like, okay, I'm like fulfilled, like this is awesome, and then all this other stuff comes in, you know, and you're like, oh, there's this great song this person just released, it's so good, and then you're like kind of back to the drawing board and you're working on music again. You know, it's not this, I don't think anyone's in this state of bliss where they're, oh, my music's the best, I feel happy, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think that exists.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's that's going to be an artist's problem, like forever and ever, never going away.
Yeah.
And the ones who will be affected by it most are the ones that everybody is looking up to the most, probably.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you forget that it seems so bizarre when you see someone who you really idolize, you know, especially when you're younger and there's a rock star or musician or whatever that you're like, this person is amazing. They're just a person that started out, was working really hard at something. They loved different musicians and they thought their music was crap, and then suddenly they're on the main stage. You know, it's so being in that position must be so weird, you know?
Yeah, what you just said really reminded me of an experience I had this summer. In my teenage years, I was a huge Radiohead fan. I think probably I got into them around Hail to the Thief times, which was like maybe 2005 or something like that. Anyway, around that time. And they were doing these massive world tours, and I never could go. I never could like go into Toronto to catch one of their shows. And then now, 15 years later, I feel like I saw them when they came into town, and I feel like I was way better prepared to see them than I would have been then. I think if I saw them then as human beings, it would have kind of ruined the band for me. But now seeing them as like their dads, and they're just doing what they really enjoy and doing it really well on stage, I think I got a little extra layer of appreciation, and it didn't ruin their music for me. I don't know if that's weird, but it was something like it was good that I didn't meet my hero when I was too young to appreciate it.
Exactly. Till you really realize that they're just humans and they're just old. Like you don't, when you're so young, adults are different, you know? And then when you realize you're an adult and you're just like, I feel the same, but I'm just old and tired. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So yeah, it's a totally different thing. I remember I was a huge fan of Blink-182 and Green Day, and my same buddy who owns the restaurant now, right? He's like one of my best friends, if not my best friend. my best friend. So,
let's hope he listens to this to hear you say
right.
that.
No. But I remember we were like the biggest Blink-182 fans, and we were in a band together in like 6th grade. And he got to go up just an hour north of where we lived in Tucson, Arizona, and go see Blink and Green Day play together, right? And
Sick.
And his mom was at the same hotel that Green Day was staying at, and they're in the elevator with Billy Joel, and I actually and so he gets to go up that day, and he's like trying to find him. He's in the same hotel, like seeing if he can, scope him down or whatever. And I couldn't go. I had to stay home. My mom was like, there's no way you're going to a concert. I was maybe 13 or 14 or 15 or whatever. So you remember or you think about it, those times, they're gods, they're not, they're older, they're subhuman, or not subhuman. They're
superhuman.
They're superhuman. Exactly. Yeah. And they make the most beautiful music. And then you grow up and you realize, okay, they're geniuses, but at least, you understand what it's like to be at that age. Yeah, exactly.
They're dudes. Yeah. I would have absolutely made a fool of myself if I was in that position, like going up the elevator with Tom York and I was 15. You'd be like, oh my God, I love you. I love your music. I love it. Like, I couldn't have contained myself at that age. And his reaction, like, would have been my reaction to that, would probably be weirded out. And that would have that would have turned me right off. 15-year-old Rhett would have been totally turned off of that. But
you'd be an accountant now.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know about that. I didn't have accountant grades. But anyway. I think it's sometimes best don't meet your idols, don't meet your heroes is the truth. It's the truth. Yeah. Especially until you are like emotionally mature enough. And I think that could happen. That could happen for some people when they're 15, but it wasn't me.
Yeah. It's funny that way. And then you think about those people that are childhood stars, then that's a whole different, like, imagine being Justin Bieber.
Oh man.
What is that life like? Because you're 15, but then you're ultra famous and people think you're a god. I can't imagine putting myself in that scenario. I can't understand it. You would probably think that you're a god. I think so.
It would be hard to. You would need a really strong support structure. I think it would be hard to like contextualize your life.
Totally.
I'm not like I wouldn't call myself like a hater. I don't you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm not like, oh, fuck Justin Bieber or whatever. But like I in a way I kind of feel bad that his youth was removed from him by people for money.
Totally. Yeah.
It's like stolen.
Right. And I can totally see that because it's a very bizarre thing to think about because he has all the money in the world. But when you have all the money in the world, you lose, as you mentioned, you lose the context. Like, it doesn't feel like all the money in the world because that's just what you've always had. Yeah. So you're like, okay, this is baseline. And then everyone wants something from you. It must be so strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the trick. I think in electronic music, Eric Prydz could walk down the street of Toronto and probably not get noticed. He might get noticed, but but if he went to some small town and bought a house in a small town, he could operate under the radar. Justin Bieber, not happening. People are going to know who he is. So that's if it ever happens for us. We picked the right side of the music business because we can be, famous in Germany and still live in Tucson.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, look at Marshmello. He's walking around. No one knows who the hell he is.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's genius. That's genius.
That's the only genius thing about it. No, just kidding. Where's Prydz from? He's not from Toronto. I should
Swedish.
know that, but he's Swedish. Okay. Because I was gonna say if there's another awesome artist out of Toronto, I'm done. It's like everyone I talk to, all the Mau5trap guys are out of Canada. Of course, Deadmau5. I'm a huge Deadmau5 fan out of Canada.
We all say Toronto, but it's like Joel is from Niagara Falls, I think, And I'm from somewhere called Burlington. So I just want you to know that it's all Southern Ontario, but we are diverse in our locations. I think Rez is from Niagara Falls as well. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah. Dude, well, now I'm meeting all these Toronto people. So like Lunar is Toronto. Who else? Ash is Ash? I'm trying to remember.
I think he's told me he's in Toronto. I've only met him digitally, but I think he's in Toronto.
Garrett.
Garrett is in Toronto as well. I actually met him in Florida randomly, but he lives in Toronto now.
You were was that for the Music Week thing? Because I know you did the Mau5trap. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that seems sweet. You guys had a house, right?
It was.
Dude, that's epic.
It was a bit strange for me as my first kind of experience with that sort of thing. Like I love DJing and I love playing out and stuff like that. And I don't get as many opportunities as I would like to do that. If anyone's listening and they want to book me, just reach out anytime. Hey. Little plug. Hey. But yeah, that was a blast. I don't know I'm sure people posted pictures of this at the time, but I think Joel has a tie-in with Corona, and there was so much Corona in that house that a team of people couldn't drink it in a week. Like it was,
oh god,
there may have been 1,000 bottles, cans. Like I'm not exaggerating. There were 2 4s on 2 4s on 2 4s on 2 4s. It was so much beer. Very generous of Corona Corporation. Thank you if you're listening.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was weird. I don't know if you've ever been in an Airbnb house that like that's all it is. I had never been in one before, but it was like this beautiful mansion in Miami.
I saw the videos.
Yeah. Okay. If you saw that, you know, it was like it looks sort of like a Scarface, like 1980s mansion, but it was absolutely empty. Like there was nothing in it other than like a couple couches and the beds that we slept in. It was just it was like kind of being in a ghost town. It felt like, you know, somebody used to live here 30 years ago and you guys can stay here for the next couple of nights. I really enjoyed that trip. We went to it actually it was a very inspiring trip because we went to a nightclub called Space Miami there. I think that's related to Space Ibiza, I think. But it is, if you ever are in Miami and you have the opportunity to go to Space, it's absolutely unbelievable. We saw Pan Pot there. I'm blanking on the rest of the names that we saw, but at like 3:00 in the morning, Pan Pot was on there, and it was mind blowing. The sound system, the dance floor is like surrounded by subwoofers. It was amazing. It was amazing. I'm glad I had my hearing protection. If you go to Space, bring hearing protection.
Dude, when I saw those videos, I was like, okay, so I work on music, right? And of course, for the people that love Mau5trap's like, you know, it's the goal, right? And to see all you guys be at one house partying together and then playing music together there for Miami Music Week, that is so freaking cool, man. Just the fact that they put that together and you guys could all be together and do this. I mean, I was watching, I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome.
We should really do that more. That should happen more. They're all over in England today, actually. Like there's
right.
Monster Get Down are over there with Joel and Knife Party. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We should do we should do more of the independent guys, like the lower tier people. That sounds. But we should. I should do it more often. I really enjoyed that. But
you guys should play Phoenix, Arizona. That's my pitch. I'll help. Like I'll call the what is it, the venues. I'll try and set up with the venues. I tried to help Julian. So Julian played in Arizona. It was really cool. Because he's out in LA, so it's not too bad. It's a pretty quick drive. So I was going back and forth with him, trying to get him, good information on where he should play. Because there's some good clubs here. There's some really bad clubs here. But every time I want to give an episode, I'm like, oh yeah, your next show should be in Arizona. And they're like, and a lot of guys like Looters in Canada, and you're in Canada, so like, I doubt it, man.
That's I don't know if anybody who's been on has talked about that, but it's really hard as a Canadian to go down and play in the States.
Right.
Yeah, you guys don't like anybody coming in and playing that is not from the States.
It's gotten worse. Yeah.
Everything I hear, like from what I'm told, like if you want to go to the UK and play, it's like a single form. You fill it out, and it's like, okay, no problem, come in. To go to the States, it's like months. You have to know in advance. It's very tough.
And I think it costs money as well, right? I think, don't you have to have paid for some permit, or you have to have some temporary work visa or something? It costs money. So
there are a few routes you can go, but it does cost money. It's a pain in the butt. So fix that.
Yeah.
Call your senators.
Done. We'll have a Chasing Creativity push to like change the legislature, and then we'll get more artists coming to America.
It might be an uphill battle. I don't know.
Yeah. But dude, I mean, this one thing I can mention, or one thing I want to say about our given conversation today. I love that we got really into more of the process, like behind the DAW, and some of those things that you've done, not necessarily like where you feel most creative, but actual kind of tips and different things that you employ when you're working on the music. Because I mean, I think that stuff is just so interesting, and I don't know, it's been really, really cool.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And if anybody who's listening has any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. I usually respond. So. Yeah. No promises. No promises.
Well, yeah, man. I really do appreciate you doing this. This is super cool, and they're always so fun.
My pleasure,
going
man.
into it. Yeah. I'll prepare like little bits about questions and stuff, and then we're just off to the races. We're just talking about whatever, and it works. So it's so cool for that reason. But so last thing, so a couple things before we tie things up. I want to make sure that people listening have while they're listening to the episode here, have the chance to go and find you. So anything you want to plug, of course, I'll be putting links out and all that good stuff out too. But anything you want to plug.
Just go out and check out Hollow Earth. It's got me and ATTLAS on it. I think it's the best stuff that I've put out so far. So please check that out. Listen on Spotify, watch it on YouTube, comment, tell me how shitty you think it is. I appreciate all of that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And I'll be putting links out. I'll be putting clips up and all this good stuff. So I'm going to be promoting it as best I can on my end. Cause, I mean, I appreciate you coming on. So I want to try and do my part and promote the hell out of it too. So, yeah. And one other thing, I mention this often, but I would love to do this in another year, 6 months, whatever it is. You're going balls to the wall with making music. So there's going to be more releases. So if you want to do this again, jump on and talk music. I'd always love to do so.
Absolutely. Part 2 for sure.
Yeah. Part 2 and then part 3 and part 4. Cool, man. Cool. So, awesome. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Again, thank you to Rhett for coming on and having this conversation. I loved it. I thought this was an amazing episode. Of course, go and support him. Check out Hollow Earth. Check out his other releases. You can find him again on Spotify, on SoundCloud, Beatport. If you check out Mau5trap, you will find him there as a Mau5trap artist. So again, go and support him. Now, for next week, we will have another episode releasing on Wednesday. This is going to be with Rebecca Gelding. She just finished her PhD. She's studying what's going on in the brain when someone listens to music. Thought that was a super cool topic. We actually already recorded the episode, and it turned out to be amazing. So that will be released here the following Wednesday. So I hope you enjoy this episode again. Look for that episode. More to come. We'll continue to release these on Wednesdays. And again, I will speak with everyone again soon. Speak with everyone again soon. Speak with everyone again soon. Speak with everyone again.